And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So today is September 30th. So it's end of the month. So it's the bear months. The Christmas holidays is around the corner. Anyway, we got some interesting things to talk about this week. So let's not waste any more time. So here are some of the topics that we'll be covering today. So first and foremost is the latest what do you call this? The latest film that MC is going to release. I think it was mentioned 2023 or 24. I forgot which year. But what's interesting is how Deadpool is going to continue its success in terms of its what do you call this? In terms of its, even though it's a very limited audience, but it generated significant revenue there. And if you haven't watched the trailer, I strongly suggest that you do check it out. We'll take a look at that as well. So Deadpool, in its marketing, in its infinite wisdom, introduced the main character Ryan Reynolds, which is very interesting. And lo and behold, everyone was shocked when they saw that a foregone conclusion, a character in the past, was not going to be utilized again in the future. And I don't know how they're going to do that, but Wolverine is now back in the MCU, and they're trying to get back no one else but none other than Mr. Hugh Jackman here. So you know, first seeing it, it picked my attention. It's a good combination of obviously to act great actors playing their iconic roles here, but obviously marketing can only do so far. So what type of story they're going to do, we'll talk about that. Next is a new sport that's being introduced here. So you might not have heard of this sport. It's called pickleball. And looking at this, and even NBA superstar LeBron James is interested in owning a team. So meaning maybe the popularity has risen here. We'll talk about that as well. Next is, who says toys are only for kids, but in this case, Lego sales are up, and despite the pandemic, the demand for Lego bricks, Lego toys, building, your desires, what makes them popular. We'll talk about that in a bit. Next, some local news. We'll be talking about when nature collides with one another, meaning when the recent typhoon that struck here in the Philippines, Typhoon Karding, met its match. Not necessarily, but the battle between the Typhoon Karding versus the Madre, was an interesting discussion here. So we'll talk about that later. And lastly, an interesting topic that I saw, I wanted to share with everyone in terms of the CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, has this brainchild of creating a program to promote female participants in the STEM field, in particular in technology or in the IT field. Now, is that going to pan out? We'll talk about that as well. Anyway, so we have a comment already. Good afternoon, Lance. So thank you for joining me here today. So stay tuned for our discussion here. So if you have any comments, feel free to leave it in our chat box. So for our first topic, as mentioned, so we're dealing with a new film, and as you have noticed this past 2 years, that the MCU films hasn't been doing so well compared to before the conclusion of Avengers Endgame there. And with the exception also of Spider-Man No Way Home, all of the films one would consider lackluster, not even reaching $1 billion in terms of revenue. But obviously, there's still time for those to catch up. But the question is, what's their strategy? They're continuing creating content not just on the big screen, but also on the streaming services by offering a lot of TV shows. I think the most recent one, or currently that's being released, is She-Hulk. It's not doing so well. And then obviously you have Star Wars franchises that I think it's Andor, I think. But again, so the latest film that a lot of people are interested in after watching the trailer, wherein Ryan Reynolds is discussing his next film and has difficulty, what do you call this? Has difficulty coming up with a storyline in that skit, and lo and behold, the cameo that set the internet into frenzy, wherein Hugh Jackman came into the picture and Ryan Reynolds mentioned if he could join him, and meaning that Wolverine is back in the fold here, which is pretty interesting, right? So let's take a look at the article. So according to CNBC.com, Hugh Jackman is back as Wolverine for the end time in Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool 3. So this is, pretty surprising. Where in the last Wolverine film in Logan, where the main character Wolverine died. So how are they going to revive the character? Is it going to be another time jump wherein they go back to the past, wherein they can use his character and use CGI and so forth? So it will be pretty interesting how they're going to do that, or maybe pull him out in the past and you know go to the future, something like that. So it will be pretty interesting how they're going to convince the audience with that one. Anyway, so it was mentioned here. So Deadpool is one of several comic book properties that Disney has acquired when it bought 20th Century Fox way back in 2019. And what's interesting is the X-Men franchise and even the Fantastic Four are only the other two franchises or titles or comic book stories that hasn't been utilized yet. And I've seen many X-Men films in the past. Some not so well, some is okay. And then the debacle for Fantastic Four, no reboot or even the original Fantastic Four has reached the success that compared to the other superhero films. So looking forward on how are they going to do that. Now, obviously, appearing in the cameo here, I think they already made two videos about it. And in the second video, wherein Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds is discussing the story in terms of how Wolverine was is going to be integrated into the story, and obviously they couldn't share the whole story by blasting an 80s music so that we couldn't hear what they were talking about there. So giving us more suspense here, so to get us hooked in terms of what could the plot would be moving forward. But I'm always optimistic but also pessimistic in a sense that we've been burned in terms of creating a lot of hype, but at the end of the day, if you don't produce whether it's a good storyline or even a tremendous product, we're always left hanging, spending our hard-earned money, and then get disappointed in terms of not enjoying the game, not enjoying the product, or in this case, not enjoying the film here. Now, obviously, Ryan Reynolds has been synonymous now since he made the character that popular, which is close to his persona in real life. And according to Mr. Reynolds himself, he mentions, "Hey everyone, we're extremely sad to have missed D23, but we've been working very hard on the next Deadpool film for a good long while now. I've had to really search my soul on this one. His first appearance in the MCU obviously needs to feel special. So we need to stay true to the character, find new depth, motivation, meaning every Deadpool needs to stand out and stand apart. It's been an incredible challenge and has forced me to reach down deep inside." Well, obviously, getting Wolverine back is, I think, a tremendous strategy. So the partnership between Deadpool or the dynamic between Deadpool and Wolverine would be interesting. So let's see here if we can.
Hey everyone, we're extremely sad to have missed D23, but we've been working very hard on the next Deadpool film for a good long while now.
I've had to really search my soul on this one.
His first appearance in the MCU obviously needs to feel special. We need to stay true to the character, find new depth, new motivation, new meaning.
Every Deadpool needs to stand out and stand apart. It's been an incredible challenge that has forced me to reach down deep inside.
And I have nothing. Yeah. It's completely empty up here
I forgot to shoot the screen.
and terrifying.
Here's
We
the
did have
important
one
part.
idea. Hey, Hugh, you want to play Wolverine one more time?
Yeah, sure, Ryan.
And that got the internet verse, or people in the internet set crazy in terms of the excitement that it has driven. And I think they have created already they've created a second video wherein they were discussing, as mentioned earlier, and obviously a lot of anticipation, looking forward whenever the film is going to be released sometime in the near future here. And what's interesting, Deadpool is not your typical what do you call this, typical MCU film, which is catered to a young audience. It's rated for mature audience, or rated 18 and above here. So the storyline, they can play a little bit more with its character and its presentation. Obviously, it's targeting a mature audience, not necessarily compared to the other films. So looking forward to that one. Hopefully they don't mess this up, because I was feeling that the upcoming films later this year, or the subsequent one, it's not going to be as impactful as the previous one, or the earlier, or phase 1, phase 2 films here. So could be wrong, but we just have to wait and see how it pans out. Okay, next is about, sports in particular. So when I saw this article, it was pretty interesting that a new up and coming sports has been growing in terms of popularity in the United States, and the name caught my attention in terms of its peculiarity, and got me checking out, because one of the main investors planning on investing or buying a team is none other than Mr. LeBron James here. So what is pickleball here? So let's take a dive here. So according to CNBC.com, so LeBron James is not just a pickleball fan, but he's now interested in terms of buying a team. So as you can see here, they're calling it the MLP, the Major League Pickleball. And they announced that LeBron James, Maverick Carter, Draymond Green, and even Kevin Love are among its latest groups of investor. It also mentions that pickleball is growing in popularity and has recently attracted a big business. And obviously, gaining traction and an audience which makes money is critical here. Now, obviously, getting the best athletes, but how the game is played would be critical as well. So we'll take a look at of what the heck is pickleball all about. So it mentions here that with the new funding, it's expanding to 12 to 16 teams by next year, playing in 6 cities nationwide. So what is pickleball all about? So pickleball is like tennis, a mishmash of other sports of tennis, ping pong, and badminton of sorts. So let me search pickleball. Okay, so this is what pickleball would look like.
Hey, I'm Matt Goebel, and I'm here to talk to you guys about pickleball. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America.
So you can see here, it looks like a tennis arena, but the dimensions is shorter, or narrower. And they use a different racket, or in this case, a paddle of sorts, like ping pong racket, slightly bigger but smaller than a tennis racket. And you can play singles and doubles here, and obviously it's not as fast action like tennis or badminton, but it's more of finesse skills required here. So does it create a lot of intense actions in terms of its gameplay here? Obviously, it's a slower version, not comparing to the more fast-paced pros. But as you can see here, the difference in terms of tennis and pickleball is it's much closer, similar to how ping pong is. You're close to the table with one another, but obviously ping pong has limitations in terms of its dimension. But this one, you have a bigger field, but you're playing up close here, and not having being able to play or not having played tennis or even ping pong, but obviously they're using a different racket and different ball, and obviously is this primarily an is this primarily an indoor or outdoor sports? That would be interesting here. And if it's primarily an outdoor like tennis, that would be interesting. Obviously, element could come into the picture, and is the type of surface a going to be different as well, similar to tennis, where there's hard courts, clay courts, wherein you have also grass, and so forth, or will it be just one type of surface? Because that would be interesting. That would add another layer to the sport here. But what's interesting here is how quickly it has risen to the point that a lot of people are interested in this case. Sports legend LeBron James is interested in investing in the sport here. And obviously, at the end of the day, for the sport to grow, it has to have a a following of sorts, and a big following at that, to be able to rise to the levels like how the NBA are popular now, the Major League Baseball, you have soccer, you have the American football, and even hockey. So how it rises, obviously that's going to take time, and will it reach another gear and reach stratospheric level to the point that it becomes popular, similar to the other major sports in the United States. We'll see here. So it's interesting here now. Moving forward, so in terms of of toys, as I mentioned earlier, what's interesting here is that even there are certain times that when you think toys are only made for kids, that's not necessarily the case here. And case in point here, in terms of Lego, Legos has been synonymous for I don't know how many decades since it was invented and became popular to the masses here. And even to this day, the growth and popularity of Lego sales has been increasing steadily. And it's not just the popularity of the product, but also the reach into other markets. So we'll take a look at that. And you may notice here behind my background, I have plenty of Legos that I've assembled. So I enjoy building Lego sets, obviously more for display rather than for playing as like a kid. So you have Ferrari on top and some motorbikes here below. And as you can see, if Lego ever decides to build a Gundam in the future, that would be interesting as well. But we will wait and see. But anyway, so going back to the article. So according to CNBC.com, it mentions that the Lego sales has jumped to 17% in the first half of this year alone. And obviously, they've been creating products, partnering with different franchises or product or companies that they can take advantage, and none more so than none bigger than Star Wars and even the Harry Potter franchise. And one of the most popular Star Wars product is the Millennium Falcon, right? And obviously that's a pretty expensive endeavor if you're going to build it. And even if I wanted to build it, where am I going to put it? Obviously, it would occupy a lot of space. That's why I tend to favor smaller items. Actually, the car is pretty significant already in terms of size. So, even if I wanted to add more, but there's no space here. That's why I tend to gravitate the motorcycles or the sports bikes here instead here. Anyway, it mentions here that the revenue it has reached is close to 30 billion Danish krone, or about 3.5 billion. So that's pretty remarkable in terms of its performance. So some of its included models are Lego Star Wars, as mentioned, and Lego Harry Potter. And also they're known for the Lego Technique and Lego City, and I used to be a big fan of it when I was younger as well. So you can see here the different franchises that they've tied up with, obviously creating those Lego sets to build the popular, whether it's TIE Fighter or the Millennium Falcon, or maybe even building headgears or helmets for what do you call this? what do you call this? The Imperial Army and whatnots here. And obviously, you could buy it in practically any toy stores or even Lego stores if you have that in your area here. Now, what's interesting is Lego sales are building on pandemic era growth, boosted by popular Lego sets as mentioned, Star Wars and Harry Potter. Now, for those who are not familiar, Lego is a Danish toy maker. Okay, and it mentions that it jumped to 70%, which is pretty strong compared to, you know, not necessarily compared to, my mistake. Anyway, Lego is one of the main big toy companies that saw massive gains in terms during of the pandemic. One would think that business would suffer during the pandemic, but they're not. That's not the case for them. So meaning consumers of all ages during the lockdown is looking ways to entertain or keep themselves busy. So what do is obviously invest in times that they can, or watch, play, or in this case, build. And obviously, Lego is for all ages. And even according to the CEO, Niels Christensen, touted that the company's diverse selection of toys and their appeal across generations for the continued sales surge, which I tend to agree because obviously Legos is not just for kids. I mean, I try to introduce it for my kids and they enjoy doing it, but after some time they get tired playing for it. But what's interesting is if you break off those pieces, you can build a different slew of products to your heart's contents and imaginations here. And what was mentioned here, it is one of the broadest one we've ever had, according to the CEO here. So it's preschool, kids, girls and boys, teens, adults, and I think I recall even one of the football legends, David Beckham, is a big fan of Lego toys. Wherein I think I saw him once in an interview where he was building one eighth of a scale. I forgot what scale is it, but anyway, he was building a Lego scale. I think truck or jeep, I forgot. Wherein his wife was criticizing him in terms of it's late in the evening and you're playing with Lego toys. To each his own. So meaning, once you gotten used playing with those toys, and if you have the income, the resources to be able to buy those items, and tendency you will buy them because of nostalgia and the fun, that joy of being able to build one. Actually, I saw one video from Jerry Rig Everything where he built a big crane that took him days to be able to accomplish it. So you will be able to build it, any cars, any vehicle, any design that Lego can conceive would be possible. And obviously they're always looking for that particular model or particular product that would be popular to the masses here. And obviously partnering with big companies or big franchises such as Star Wars and even the Harry Potter franchise. I think I saw one wherein they even had a Lego set of a popular TV show, Friends, I think, and others. I won't buy it for myself, but there are people who are interested. So I mean, there's a market for different types of Lego toys here. Now it mentions here that the CEO mentions that I think we make sure we tap into different passions, which I think they're trying to do, and obviously one has to capitalize on it so that the popularity doesn't wane, because you'll keep on adding more content and then bringing back popular products that has been a big staple for Lego here. And he mentions you can buy a Formula One car or a Ferrari. Yes, I can even have a Duplo set that fits in your bathtub. So I was interested in buying a Formula One, but I already bought the Ferrari here, so I don't have enough space anymore. So I decided not to buy here. So meaning their product is such a strong commodity. I won't say commodity, but a strong product regardless of difficult times. People are still buying them boatloads in terms of that. And it mentions that the net profit between January and June of this year has reached already close to a little over to $800 million. So meaning what they're doing is tremendous here. And obviously they want to capitalize and continue the growth, especially the upcoming Christmas season is just around the corner. So obviously a lot of toys will be in demand. I'm sure one of those would be a Lego set as well. Anyway, continue with our story with a local news. As I mentioned earlier, when Mother Nature clashes with one another, who will win here? You have a Typhoon Karding, and then one of our nature's Sierra Madre, what do you call this? Mountain ranges in Luzon area, wherein the recent typhoon hit the Philippines, the northern part of Luzon. Could have been even more catastrophic if it weren't for the protection of the mountain ranges that surrounded the northern part of Luzon area here. Now, obviously, those who were on the other side of the mountain range are still hit severely, in particular Baler and even Aurora province, particularly Baler, as well as in Nueva Ecija provinces. And obviously, there are significant implications when, Mother Nature or typhoons crashes into our island here. But the question is, what are we doing to protect our interests here? Now, obviously, this is something out of our control. But in the case of our Sierra Madre here, what's the status here? And, for the longest, I didn't realize how big the Sierra Madre mountain ranges is that spans across the entire region here. So let me show you what I mean here. So according to Inquire.net, Sierra Madre stood up or stands up to Karding, was able to stave off the brunt of the typhoon. But mentions here, but needs protection versus the human it's trying to save, which is kind of sad if you think about it. Mother Nature is here, doing its job. Obviously, mountain ranges is necessary so that it can lessen the strength of the thunderstorm or typhoon that's coming in. No matter amount of rainfall, and obviously the trees that it inhabits will absorb it. So the strong winds, so technically the mountains blocks the corridor that could severely hamper the eastern part of the Philippines here. So let's see here further. So let's see here. So you can see here. So it's considered Luzon's backbone that they mentioned in this article, where you can see here the blue shaded part is the entire range of the Sierra Madre. I didn't realize how vast it is and how long it ranges from the southern part of Luzon all the way to the northern part of Luzon here. So no wonder the rest of the Luzon area is well protected because of this, because of the Sierra Madre as mentioned. So it ranges from Cagayan in the north all the way to Quezon province here in the southern region here. So it stretches 500 kilometers here. Now, some interesting tidbit. So it encompasses 1.4 million hectares of land area. So that's pretty significant. Now, it mentions here it has 287 or 88,000 of hectares of land, wherein 71 or 72,000 of hectares of coastal and marine water. So the Sierra Madre Natural Park, which is in the midsection of the mountain range, consists of those two, as I mentioned earlier. Now, what's interesting, it mentions 40% of the remaining 22% forest cover in the Philippines in 1999 was within Sierra Madre. So a chunk of our forest is because of Sierra Madre. Now, it also mentions that the elevation for the highest peak for Sierra Madre is a little close to 1,300 meters above sea level. So it's pretty tall. So it would be nice to be able to hike all the way to top. I don't know if it would be safe, but it would be interesting. Now, it mentions here, yes, in terms of its diversity, because obviously the impact of the typhoon is stable because of the protection that we are provided here. And not only that, there are a lot of inhabitants in the Sierra Madre. And as mentioned here, there are 3,500 plant species in Sierra Madre alone. And then it mentions that this represents roughly almost half or 50% of all species recorded in the Philippines. So meaning a lot is residing in that ecosphere. And it mentions here 58% of the species are endemic to the mountain range. So meaning they tied to the fate of the mountain ranges here. If we were to if the mountain range were to disappear, practically the plants and the animals that lives there would be gone forever here, which is something we don't want to do. Now, it mentions here also that the Sierra Madre also contains some of the most species of birds in Luzon, accounting to 80% of all resident breeding birds. So, I mean, a lot of animals are inhabiting those regions. So, as you can see here, it encompasses roughly a little over 5 to 600 species, mammals, amphibians, and even reptiles here. As you can see here, I didn't know. I only found out in this article that it had more than 250 different types of reptiles here. Now, it made sense that mammals inhabited the island. I didn't even know that even amphibians inhabited not the island, the mountain range here. But what's interesting here is obviously mountains, or in this case, the Sierra Mountain ranges, provide source of water for the low-lying areas, the towns or the barangays and so forth to supplement, especially in the Aurora region, wherein vast rice fields are being cultivated there. But the sad thing here is because of mismanagement of taxing our resources here, many of our what do you call this? Many of the threats has been increasing. And what do I mean by those threats? So let's look closely here. So the threats here is the lost forest cover in Sierra Madre way back in 1998 to 2010. So that's roughly about 12 years span, right? And have lost already a little over 161,000 of hectares of area. And it mentions here that the forest cover disappearing in Sierra Madre because of illegal logging, slash and burn farming, and fuel for wood collection, poaching, and expansion of human settlement. And we're losing those hectares by boatloads in terms of 1,400 hectares each year. And eventually, if we keep on doing that, eventually there will be no more Sierra Madre, and that's could be detrimental to everyone here. And obviously, using the resources that the Sierra Madre offers is good, but we have to be able to replenish those resources. And obviously, mismanagement, miscalculation here, if we deplete all of the resources and we don't replenish them, that eventually we will cease to exist to the point, because where are we going to get our resources here for wood, for our for the animals that's living in our ecosystem, and even the birds? If every one of those animals, creatures cease to exist, then how are people supposed to survive? There's always a limitation at a threshold that we cannot break, otherwise that would spell catastrophic here. Now, it's not just the deforestation is jeopardizing the health of our Sierra Madre, is the dam that's being erected here. And it mentions that if building the Kaliwa Dam, which cost 12 billion, which was financed by China, 300 hectares of forest will be permanently flooded. So meaning those who inhabit those areas, meaning mammals, reptiles, and birds, could be severely affected. And once they're gone, there's no turning back here, and that is pretty alarming here. Now, obviously, there's still time to rectify those concerns, but the question here is, are we doing anything to ensure the safety of our environment? Because obviously, we cohabitate with not just humans, but with animals and nature here. And if we don't take care of our nature, obviously, there will be dire severe consequences that one can only fathom what those can be in the future. And we're seeing in terms of globalization, global warming, and the frequency and the severity of thunderstorms has been slowly and ramping up becoming much worse than compared to, say, 10, 20, or even 50 years ago here. So hopefully everyone is staying glued and keeping an eye on our environment here. Anyway, for our last story, so as I mentioned earlier, what was interesting here, the CEO of Apple Company or Apple Inc., which is headed by Tim Cook, which is one of the biggest tech companies in the world, is promoting for a for the empowerment of female in the tech industry in particular, which is I have no problem here. Maybe he didn't do the research, he doesn't know, or maybe he just want to push his agenda here because obviously pushing for uh female in the industry is noble because you want everyone to have an opportunity regardless of gender, race, of color. But the point here is understanding the difference between male and female because of preferences. And as in previous studies has shown in terms of personality traits, preferences, one would see that male tend to gravitate into what do you call this? Gravitate to more abstract, more what do you call this? Abstract concepts or solving problems in itself, while female tend to gravitate in terms with dealing with people because they are more agreeable than the male counterpart here. And it's interesting that he's pushing for women to be more participative in the IT industry, which is fine. But if you start that rabbit hole, are you saying that you're going to open that opportunity for all profession, or is it just in a particular segment? Because obviously with our current society, with pushing with ideologues, identity politics, which is creates a lot of discourse with different people, different race, and so forth. And I think at the end of the day, obviously as a company, whether it's Apple or any company at that the ultimate goal is, are you the best person for the job regardless of gender and race or what or ethnicities here. And obviously I think what promoting, encouraging everyone, giving everyone equal opportunity, I think I have no problem with that notion. But pushing that, let's say you want to have equal proportions of gender in certain types of profession, if you go that rabbit hole, meaning imagine not just in IT industry, so if you want equal proportions for different professions, let's say policemen, lawyers, I think that's doable. But if you go to a more laborious job, more dangerous jobs, let's say being an engineer, not many female tends to gravitate to that profession. Oil rigs, carpenters, plumbers. Because if you open one path, you should open to all paths. I mean, equal opportunity, as I mentioned. But you should give them, or everyone, or whether it's male or female, should have their own choice whether what do they prefer. Now, I'm not saying not all women is not allowed to participate in a particular field, but not everyone will participate, mainly a small percentage here. And when they're saying that there's great inequality because of pay gap, well, obviously look closely in terms of the professions that they're choosing in terms of risk and reward. Then it would makes much more sense as to why, let's say, male tends to have higher salary while female tends to have. Is it because one is better than the other? Not necessarily, because of the risk that it entails. Being an engineer, being a carpenter, or bricklayer in that case, that tends to be laborious. You don't see any female doing those types of jobs. So meaning if you start this path, it opens a can of worms, so to speak, can get complicated quickly here. Anyway, looking into the rationale as to why Tim Cook is pushing for more women in the tech industry, and as mentioned, in the tech, when you're a software engineer or an IT engineer or data scientist and whatnots, you tend to see there are commonalities of what type of character traits or personality that is necessarily required to be able to do those jobs well and be at the top, considering at the top. Anyway, so as the CEO is mentioning that women are important in the rise of the tech industry. I think it's not just in the tech industry. I think in the industry as a whole. You want more women to participate in the workplace to get the best people at the job. Now, obviously, there are pros and cons when you do that. You're giving up one thing over the other. But he mentions in his recent interview, he explained that female employees are insufficient. Yes, if you look at the proportion in the IT, it's always not proportionate. He mentioned that there's no good excuse for women not to be in the technology sector. Well, you can't blame women if they are not interested to be in that particular industry. And insisting that they should be in there just because you wanted to doesn't mean it will necessarily happen, right? At the end of the day, because of the difference between male and female, their preferences will always manifest at the end of the day, whether you agree with it or not here. Now, the CEO goes on to say that the lack of women, if there's no diverse workforce, which is very dangerous because diversity is important, right? But a question is, are you giving them equal opportunity or you want equal outcome? Because if you go that rabbit hole of equal outcome, then it kind of gets kind of iffy, because what's the incentive for me to do better or to do my best if everyone's going to get the same outcome here, regardless if you're male or female? That's why there is such a thing as called as hierarchy here, because it's a necessity here, and that's has been embedded in our culture for thousands of years. Just look at not just in business, but in a social construct and even in the animal kingdom as well here. Now, goes on to say that 35% of the iPhones maker employees are comprised of female. So a pretty significantly low number. Now, they're boasting that the manufacturer has already 5 female executives among its 22 leadership roles, so which is pretty small. But obviously, at the top of the leadership role, there are a lot of responsibilities necessitated or attached to it. And obviously, typically in our society, if you're a female, if you reach a certain age, let's say in your late 20s or early 30s, one would consider of having a family, because if you don't consider having family early on and you wait later on, then there's such a thing as if you get too old, childbearing would be more difficult at that time. That's why in other studies, even professional women who's great at their job tends to quit by the time they reach in their late 30s, when they're considering they have changed their mindset that maybe having a family is a priority. But that's not for everyone. So there's always exception. That's why you see here in case to cases that female tends to prioritize having family rather than being productive in the workplace. That's why that's the role of the male there, is to support the family. And obviously cohabitating, is another dynamic of working together, is another discussion altogether here. And just saying because there's an equal proportion of male and female doesn't mean that the female segment is being unjustified or being prejudiced, so to speak. And even Mr. Cook goes on to has decided to launch the all new female or new all female foundation program in the United Kingdom to show their appreciation of women's efforts in the tech sector. Which I have a question. If the women's effort is appreciated by Team Cook, how about the men's effort? It has to be both. It cannot just have preferences. That's where the prejudice comes in, which is kind of misleading in a workplace, because regardless of what we think, if you're young and old, male or female or whatever region you come from, if you can do the task that is assigned to you, at the end of the day, the outcome should speak for themselves. And regardless of where you came from, despite that, you overcome it and be able to, surpass or overcome difficulties and be successful in our daily lives here. But we'll see how this pans out. Will it be the outcome that they're looking for? Will it generate more women in the IT industry? Just look in our colleges here. Do you see a lot of women enrolling in the IT courses? You tend to see there are distinctions in different courses. Let's say in dealing in the medicine, whether nurses or doctors, there are more female there than male. But if you look at the engineering courses, there are more male than female in general because of the differences of preferences, as I mentioned earlier. And there have been other studies that has integrated or have discussed this and has showcased that the difference is substantial at the opposite extremes. On average, we're similars. There are similarities between male and female, but on the opposite extremes, that's where the differences tends to stand out. But anyway, we leave it at this, and we'll see how this plan of Mr. Cook pans out for the company here. And obviously, he's trying to get more people to work in his company, whatever his agenda there. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Leave your comments down below if you have any questions, or do you agree or we disagree with anything that I have discussed here today. Anyway, as always, I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.